Welcome to Six Pack Discussions, where Cody and Jared take on the biggest, most talked about headlines with logic, passion, and a six-pack of beer.
If you're listening, we challenge you to take an unbiased view of the world, as we know these conversations are complicated. So sit down, crack a beer, and welcome a new perspective. Super neat, right? I haven't even opened it up yet. Let's see here. What do we got? Knee Deep Brewing Co.
Cool.
Deep Knee or Deep Haze. And I looked, and Deep Haze sounds like it's going to be really strong. It's not that strong, so we'll talk about that in a minute a little bit.
All right. What are we talking about today, man?
Okay, so today, something I keep on hearing about on a couple different podcasts, it's how pharmaceutical companies advertise directly to the consumer. So I know we've talked about drugs. We've talked about how Americans might have a little bit of a prescription drug problem in past episodes. And today I think we're going to take a little, let's say, uncover the sheets a little bit, kind of open up the sheets and say, hey, is this problem maybe a little bit of an advertising? Self-inflicted. Or is it also, the advertising, has it really been that good in that world? Does advertising work well? Okay. Or does it work well with drugs? Because if it does, we could have a kind of a weird ethical dilemma that we might be in with the drug companies and their marketing. So I think this is a fun one. I think a lot of people think about this a little bit. They might have some negative perceptions around drug companies, but when they see a drug that's advertised to them and they feel like, oh, wait, that might help me, they have no problem in most cases going to the doctor and asking about it, clearly from the data.
It's almost a little bit more asking rather than saying, hey, this is what I have, this is what you're going to do about it. And so this is where I'm conflicted with this. And maybe I'm just inferring a little too much from the tone of your voice, but I just want to maybe throw this out there. Are we faulting people for being a little bit more knowledgeable? Because look, as we went into in our earlier podcast episode regarding the epidemic of prescription drugs and the uprising in the prescription of these drugs, we know how it works, i.e. different doctor offices get kickbacks from various drugs.
Kind of. It's not direct, but...
It's not direct, but there is a monetary benefit for the prescription of certain drugs from certain offices. Is that a true statement?
I'm going to push back. I don't think so.
I know that to be true.
Really?
Okay, I'm sorry. I think that to be true. I apologize. Okay. That was a
so mistake. my researchers never found that. Okay, let's just say so there's two drugs that help with erectile dysfunction: Cialis, Viagra. Those two compete. Dr. Jones.
Yep.
You have an office right down the street. You have a bunch of males that come in there and say, hey, I'm having a little problem, erectile dysfunction. Saw on the computer or on the TV an ad about Viagra. If Cialis has a deal with Dr. Jones, would that doctor try to kind of pressure you into buying Cialis? I don't think that's allowed. I think it's illegal to reward doctors based on prescription. I think Jared's fact checking me right now.
So
I think you can do kind of
kickbacks. Kickbacks are illegal, so that vernacular was improper. But it's not illegal for pharma to pay physicians' fees for speaking, consulting, etc.
Yeah, and
right?
so there is a kind of a loophole there.
Okay, so what I said wasn't correct, but to use your words, and it's a proper
You're not
term,
getting a royalty, or something.
So I did misspeak. But my original point with that was, all we're doing is essentially shifting dollars around. Rather than paying for the doctor to consult, speak, blah, 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 they're shifting it from that to more so advertising than pointing the voice in the consumer or the thought process in the consumer. Ideally, in my perfect world, maybe planting a seed, a little bit more thought-provoking, do a little bit more research on the root cause rather than just the quick fix. And of course, unfortunately, what the data is telling us is that's not the case either. It is that quick fix that's naturally going to be selected there. So again, the root of my question here, and that was a very long way of explaining it, do we have a problem with our population being educated through ads?
So real quick, some background. America is one of the only countries, actually one of two. New Zealand and America.
Correct.
The United States of America and New Zealand are one of two countries that allow for TV advertisement of drugs or direct-to-consumer advertising. Magazines, podcasts probably, TV, all the different types of ways. So are you saying that in America, do consumers have a problem with understanding what they need, and the ad is filling that gap? So let's say, for example, I have allergies. They kick up all the time, and man, it really it inhibits me to do my daily job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see an advertisement that says, "Hey, have you ever you ever wanted to be a little bit more clear? Have you ever wanted to be able to go out with your grandchildren out in the backyard and go roll around in the grass? Well, maybe Claritin's for you." So you're saying, hey, they're educating me that there's a drug that might be able to help me, and that's good?
So
maybe I'm a little confused on your question. But
no. In its most simplistic form, that is exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if there is a product or a service or a drug, it just has a negative connotation. So just to make me sound better, I'm going to say a problem.
Pharmaceutical. There's a reason they don't call it drugs.
So if there is a pharmaceutical product that can help someone with their ailment, is that a problem for educating them to get them help?
This is exactly what the Supreme Court stated in the 80s. You're right on. So in the 80s, there was a case, I think it was the state of Virginia, brought a case all the way to the Supreme Court that stated, hey, we don't want these type of advertisements. In our state, we think that they're really, trying to prop up their sales in aggressive manners. And the Supreme Court stated, I think there's 9 justices.
Yes.
8-1. So very strongly said, hey, advertising, to your point, is protected under Amendment 1, First Amendment, and also Amendment 14. They're protected underneath those two. To your point, it's free speech. Just like a person can say, hey, have you ever tried Cialis? Have you ever tried Claritin? They can say that. What makes that any different than a business saying,
have you tried software integration?
Bingo. Have you tried, whatever it is? Have you tried buying this new couch? It's more comfortable than other. And so there really wasn't any restriction. They decided, hey, this is protected. And then the only rules underneath the FCA? What's the radio broadcasting TV? FFC?
No.
I think it's federal, whatever that one is. The Broadcasting Association. They're the ones that allow for advertising. They protect advertising rights and they create laws around it. I think FCC.
FCC, yes, that sounds right.
Yeah. Federal Communications
Convention.
No. But FCC, they do have a rule, and they stated back in the day, and they changed this. This is hilarious, and this is where it gets a little leery. The rule was you can advertise on drugs after the Supreme Court ruling. You can advertise on drugs as long as you don't speak about the specific drug, the specific benefits of the drug. You don't have to talk about the side effects. So that's why a lot of Claritin drugs and a lot of drugs have a name that is similar to the benefit. And so in the late 90s, when advertising for drugs started coming into kind of mainstream, drugs were named to essentially kind of give you an idea of what the benefit would be. Claritin, become more clear, remove the allergies, things like that. And so the FCC, they fought a little bit of a battle. They lost some, they got lobbied, of course, by the pharmaceutical company. So go ahead.
I'm trying to think of other drugs. So I like the loophole, and I think that's a prime example. I'm trying to think of there's
a couple.
Cialis.
That one, of course, came out
after. I don't know what the
after.
hell that does. Viagra, I don't know what the hell that does.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that came out in the late 90s during this. So they lobbied, because it's hard to do it with one word, right? So they fought.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. So they fought, and they changed the law a little bit. And now the FCC allows for the ability to advertise the benefits of drugs and provide major side effects that need to be listed. But because there's just too many, side effects and problems with the drug, really, you can state at the very ending of ads, whether in text or verbally, where you can find the remaining information. So if you notice in a lot of advertisements, I was watching a lot of them, they'll show, this is hilarious,
The fine print.
See Golf Digest magazine for the remaining information.
Oh, yeah. Let me just go to my local 7-Eleven and get a Golf Digest.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you a 45-year-old woman who's never golfed in your life and would never have one of those magazines laying around? Mm-hmm. Interesting how they had that little loophole. Now, I'm sure you can go to the website, but really what would happen is you just go to your doctor and say, hey, would this help me? So, I don't know. I'm that's where I want to give a little bit of background around the kind of the legislation, the policies around it.
So, I guess what I'm unclear on is, you ever seen any cigarette ads?
They did remove those.
So that's where I guess I just don't understand when we're going to flex. And this is actually across all communications and questions and et cetera, right? I'm not but in the context of this podcast, I'd like to keep it in that. But that's where I get a little frustrated on, free speech, First Amendment, First Amendment, First Amendment. Oh, except for that. But that's cool because there's a lot of similarities. There's probably more similarities than anyone wants to admit between some of these pharmaceuticals
and nicotine
or the other drugs inside of a cigarette. So that's where I have a problem whenever we're going to tout our proud constitutionalist American flag wearing shirts and hats, etc. And then all of a sudden it's like, except for that. Yeah. Those are bad.
No, get you.
People get addicted to these.
Well, it's funny. That's why the Supreme Court protected it, right? And that's why we have our court system. And that's why we have people that say, hey, there's a constitution for a reason. And to your point, hey, this is a non-negotiable. That's what I think you're trying to say here is it's not like free speech is free speech only when it's good.
Well, because good is opinion-based.
It's opinion-based on whoever is in the most power.
Yeah.
Right? Just before this conversation, we were talking about how leadership comes in many different qualities. And sometimes the most charismatic person, sometimes the smartest person, sometimes just the person that is elected. Right? Leadership can come in many different ways. But unfortunately, that person that's put in that position now has the power to say what's good and bad, thus saying, well, that speech is good, that speech is bad. And to your point, it's a fine line, and it seems like we kind of crossed it already with some advertising, right? And people might be, looking at us and saying, oh my God, cigarettes should never be advertised on TV. It's evil.
Have you seen some of the drugs that are advertised on TV?
The funny thing is they're I say they're just as bad because nicotine's probably killed, millions of people at this point with, lung disease or lung, cancer. But to an individual, they can be just as bad. Somebody that's never smoked in their life but decides to take, one of these drugs that have been advertised aggressively and then taken off the market because of the side effects.
Yeah.
Ruin that person's life, maybe even killed them. I have a couple here that I want to...
Talcum powder is, even now we got a...
bad rap.
Yeah. So, I mean... I don't know. That's my biggest rub.
Is this free speech?
Because that's what this is really predicated on. Like, hey, how are you going to stop Jones and Willis Pharmaceuticals from advertising our product, guys? How the hell am I supposed to get market share? How am I supposed to knock off X, Y, and Z? Those are the bad guys. I'm the good guys. How am I supposed to get the word out?
Yeah. No, 100%. And they're probably, out of all of the different advertisements that I've ever seen, they probably provide, out of all of them, they provide all the, at least not all, they provide some of the negatives of the drug. Have you ever seen a BMW commercial that says, hey,
Wildly expensive oil changes.
No. Have you ever seen a furniture store that says, hey, only comfortable for the first 6 months and then the cushions deflate?
Hey, your jean dye will stain this color.
It's weird, right? Out of all of the different ads that are on TV, what is the only one that actually has to state some of the negatives if you purchase this product? And it's really only pharmaceutical. So they've already been kneecapped a little bit.
Now, is it because... Hold on. So that's a good point. That's a good point. Let me think on that. So is it because, these are products... They're both products that you use, the couch and the car, duh. But is it because you're ingesting it, right? To where it's impacting your health?
I drive a car and I could die in that tomorrow. A drug might actually take longer to kill me. Right?
The question was, is there any other product that has to
state its negatives? Just like pharmaceutical companies do, which I think I think it might be the only. I think drug companies have to state the negatives based on FCC laws right now, right, or FCC regulations, and it's one of those things.
What's funny is all drugs are not created equal. When's the last time you've seen a Folgers commercial that had to list the negatives about caffeine? So where is that delineation line?
Whoa, you just went. What are considered drugs? It's sugar. Cheese, caffeine.
So now do you see where I'm going? Because
Kraft, dude. Sorry, a little aside here. I saw Kraft. I don't know if you buy these. Probably don't anymore. I don't think Brittany allows that for sure. But because we've never purchased them. But growing up, the Kraft Kraft cheese singles? It used to come in a pack of 24, and you throw it on a burger.
Yeah. I haven't had good plastic cheese in a long time, man.
Do you know why they're called Kraft singles?
No.
There's no cheese in them.
Shut the fuck up.
They can't legally call it cheese slices. So they're called Kraft singles because there's no significant amount of cheese.
You're lying. It doesn't fit the definition of cheese from a percentage standpoint.
I'm sorry, but cheese has to have dairy in it. I'm sorry. Sorry. I don't know who made these rules up, but cheese has to have some type.
The man is getting me down here.
So that is what.
Okay, so are we going outside of the podcast on that? Why is caffeine the most commonly used drug in America? Doesn't have to list its negative side effects. It doesn't list that, hey, if you drink me for 3 years and you stop, you're going to be fucked.
Or you'll be slightly jittery if you overdose. Dude, oh my God.
So
another aside, I'm sorry. It's well worth it because it's caffeine. I read a story.
You can't do a sidebar off my sidebar. You're just, oh man, you're just going off the rails. All right, I'm sorry. You read a story.
I saw the story. I read it through it. This guy buys, because I was buying some chemicals online or something like that. And I was like, oh, it seems kind of sketchy, but I guess you can do it, whatever. And I got into
by online, you mean Amazon?
Yeah. But I was just buying straight up chemicals.
Okay. Like muriatic acid, shit like that, or what?
Yeah. Straight, elements from the periodic table. Which is, it's interesting you can do that.
Like 2 hydrogens and oxygen, or what?
Bingo. That's water. But just one oxygen.
These fucked up concoctions that kill millions of people.
Yeah.
H2O.
So I was buying some stuff, and I was like, man, this seems kind of weird. Has there ever been any problems? And so I went in a black hole, of course, and this kid last year, 2022, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, he's a bodybuilder type guy. Not bodybuilder, but he's just he's a fit guy. And, he has kind of like an Instagram fit account and all that kind of stuff, trying to advertise how you can get fit. He would mix his own supplements, right? So he would buy, essentially the base components and then mix his own stuff.
Fun.
Well, yeah, cool, right? Kind of a cool hobby. And for himself, not the resale. Well, he bought caffeine. Just caffeine. Again, this is me thinking about chemical components. You can buy caffeine by the pound. Right? You don't think about this, but
no.
Coca-Cola, right? Even some teas and some coffees. Literally, it's like, think of like straight.
It's an ingredient.
White powder, and it's just white powder that's caffeine. Whatever the chemical makeup of that is.
You know, this is so stupid to me, and hopefully a couple of our listeners can, you know, misery loves company, I guess.
Know that we're on the same, like, we're not smart people.
You don't think of caffeine as an ingredient.
I know.
Like, as a standalone ingredient, you almost think of it as a byproduct. Yeah, of course caffeine is in Coke.
So it is. In like coffee. Coffee, right, has caffeine because it's like a derivative of the coffee bean.
Exactly. So you almost think it's just a byproduct of various chemicals mixed together. Oh yeah, that's what produces caffeine. It's a chemical reaction.
But it's still a chemical chain. So he buys this caffeine by the pound because it's cheap. Right? And what is the number one ingredient in most pre-workouts? Believe it or not, it's just caffeine.
Caffeine or B12 was some of the healthier ones, but yeah.
Yeah, but still, caffeine is still like the big one. Well, you know, the average coffee, 100 milligrams of caffeine. A pre-workout, 300 would be pretty high. The body starts seeing negative side effects at about 1,000 milligrams. Well, he didn't understand the serving size of caffeine. So, you know, when you do your little scoop, think of a pre-workout little scoop thing.
Yeah.
That's about a tablespoon. He thought a tablespoon was, you know, 1,000 milligrams. And he's going to mix that into his thing. And that'll be 5 servings. Okay. 200 apiece. 100,000 milligrams. He puts it in there, mixes up his pre-workout, drinks it just like you've done 100 times, just like I've done 100 times, went to the gym. No, so didn't even make it to the gym. 2 minutes later, dead on the ground. Dead. Heart blows up in his body. Is that not nonsensical? So to say caffeine is not a drug, this is a perfect example of how it is a drug. It affects your body, affects your mind, affects your heart, clearly. And dosage of it can kill you or help you. So I just want to give that example because isn't that the craziest thing in the world? He had, 50,000 milligrams of caffeine in his body. He's foaming at the mouth, dead within minutes, they said. It was like the fastest death, possible almost. You imagine that? And then I think about this. So I'll finish here. I thought about this. What if a fucking pre-workout fucked their dosage up? What if there was just a little extra caffeine? Because it's not much. It's not much. One scoop is all the difference, depending on how much was in it.
All right. Sorry. I cracked my second beer. Are you still baby senior first?
I'm about to finish right here. Go for it.
So, like I said, this is actually our first time we've had Knee Deep Brewing Company here on the podcast. They got a fun little story. So, Deep Haze is everything you love about a hazy IPA. Cloudy, juicy, soft, and ridiculously smooth. Welcome to beer in the modern era. Welcome to Team Haze. You know what I always find funny? And clearly that story, although it's ironically, we're talking about advertising and marketing, etc. It's clearly printed on a can. In your life, how many times have you actually taken a can and put it into a glass?
I'd say 1 out of every 100 beers I drink.
Wow, that's even high for what I was thinking. I was thinking like one of the. I don't think I've actually ever taken a can unless I was going to split it with someone.
Uh-huh. So it's funny. The only reason I do that is probably because I drink a beer that you don't, Guinness. And Guinness, you have to pour into a glass.
Okay, that's going to be a podcast on and of itself. I'm kidding. But I just find it, everything you want about a hazy IPA, cloudy. It's the first adjective. So, talking about ingredients, caffeine and pre-workouts. So list of ingredients is by weight, what you use the most. So cloudy being the most in me, and when I'm reading, story, that's the most important. Why do I give a shit about the cloudiness whenever I'm taking a sip in a can?
Yeah, I think
in a can.
Yeah, I think some people think of cloudy with a beer. They think of more flavor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So here's what I'm happy.
It's 6.7, 6.5 alcohol, guys. The can is a tan color with a bunch of hops. Honestly,
good clean looking can.
Honestly, the kind of like that copperish orange kind of outline all around it. Mm-hmm. This is actually really great artistic look. I like the look.
So alcohol is a drug. Again, you'll see the Surgeon General warning, from the government warning rather. Mm-hmm. Kind of interesting that it has to say the bad stuff about it. Don't do this. So I want to say something. I am incredibly happy in comparison to last week because I still have nightmares from last week's beer. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. I will give this an honest. So I know they're touting hazy and cloudy, and we often associate that with flavor. I don't taste anything memorable. Huh. I think this is fine. I think this is an honest 3.5. I would order it if I saw it again, if I didn't really care for anything else. I think this is fine. I'll drink this all day long, but there's nothing that I'll remember about this, so I feel confident. An honest working man's 3.5.
I like this beer. 4.0.
So we're a little off. We're not too far because I think it's a solid beer, but I reserve those high 3s and especially the 4s. Tomorrow I won't be able to tell you, man, that Deep Haze Hazy IPA, man, did you taste X, Y, and Z from it? I just think it's.
Maybe I just like that's because it's knee deep. Because I feel like I've been knee deep in a couple situations where you're like, holy shit. So how am I getting out of this situation?
You like the advertising.
I like the advertising. It's good beer. Good job. Good beer.
So interesting because we kind of got down a tangent, but a relative tangent as far as where this line is going to be
for drugs.
For drugs, alcohol, you have to say, "Hey, don't do this shit," on the can, on the box.
I think in the ads. On the ads,
please drink responsibly. Yeah. It's literally saying, "Hey, don't drink too much of me. Don't use too much of me."
Then again, coffee shops and Starbucks.
How many coworkers do you have that it's almost bragging? Oh, I'm on my 8th cup today.
Well, we're talking about ads mainly. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever actually seen a Starbucks ad. Personally, I don't have TV, so I don't know if that's something that they even advertise. But I'm sure coffee companies have to advertise.
Their advertising is through their billboards, and billboards meaning their 1,800 stores.
Yeah,
from you or the
and also everybody with a cup. But still, they have to have some advertising. Or they did at one point. Now they're so big.
Surely.
But still, they advertise, and they're advertising caffeine, a drug. But you don't see a disclaimer.
So, and I don't know if you went down this rabbit hole without being provoked, i.e. this conversation. I did not. So, unfortunately, I'm a little ill-prepared to go down this rabbit hole as far as in the eyes of the FDA or the Supreme Court, as we were talking about earlier, alluding to earlier. Do we have a list saying, hey, these drugs are fine. You don't have to talk about the negatives. Hey, these drugs are bad. You do have to talk about the negatives.
Well, alcohol, of course, does, right? Nicotine, of course, does.
Okay.
So this is funny. There are several things that are 100% drugs. Pharmacology, scientifically, whatever you want to say. Caffeine is a drug. Right? Sugar, which no one, I don't know, our watchers, our listeners, the sugar industry is massive. They lobby so hard to make sure that sugar never even comes up as a drug. Extremely addictive.
Dude, I would be hard pressed. I'm going to throw out a really high percentage here of in the common American household, how many of the products in their fridge and pantry have sugar in them. I'm going to throw out a pretty high number, and I'm curious what you think of it. I'm going to say probably 75%.
Higher.
I'm low.
Higher.
75% of the products in the average American household.
You're not saying 90%, you're wrong.
Oh, Cody, come on. I'll give you 80. I can't give you 90.
90. Dude.
Giving 90%.
Tell me items that don't have sugar.
Are we going so like fruit, for example? Are we going added sugar or are we going sugar?
Fruit has sugar.
Okay.
Right? So
I guess I'm talking about added sugar, but
fruit has sugar. Okay? So if you
all sugar is created equal is what you're saying?
No.
Okay, so
but even in
it's almost like melatonin naturally produced versus melatonin drug. So that's the delineation that I'm using in my head.
But still, we just said sugar, right? And
Okay.
guess what?
Okay.
If you just ate a bunch of fruit all day long, you could probably be a diabetic. But guess what? There are some other things.
We'll save that story of yours for a different
podcast. Exactly. I went through a diabetic coma with eating fruit. Personally, we'll talk about it another day.
Drinking fruit.
Yeah. But still, so with fruit, with everything, you just said everything in the pantry, everything in the fridge. I think it's 90%, bro. Because you know what? I think you're giving the average American diet even more fruit than it even has in it.
I was using fruit as a loophole.
Okay.
If I'm being honest.
What do you think 90? Dude, hot dogs, bologna, most processed meats have sugar added. The only time you're not eating sugar, right? Added sugar or sugar at all is straight up raw meat. Well, sorry, cooked meat.
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
And some vegetables. Carrots.
Non-processed meat is what you're talking about, I think. Right?
Carrots, sugar. Potatoes, sugar. So many items have sugar. Now, added sugar, of course, is much worse, right? It's way different, right? Because it's been processed and it's been added to a point that doesn't add up to the fiber. But still, most items have sugar in it naturally. Carrots are extremely sugary. And believe me, there's not that many Americans that are eating carrots every day anyways. Potato chips, sugar. So dude, 90 even seems low to me. I went through me and Anna last night because I was on that little yucca. I got home from dinner, right? We went to the client dinner, and I sold everybody on yucca. Guys, hey, if you're listening right now, go download this app called Yucca.
It'll cost you hundreds of dollars.
I've been using it for multiple years. I love it.
We've only been using it for about a year.
Oh, yeah. My brother showed it to me. I'm like, dude, this is the best thing on earth.
That's a chance one, huh?
Oh, yeah. It's a free app. What Jared was mentioning is that it's just going to make you make conscious decisions. It's a free app. You download it. You can scan any barcode, and it tells you if it's good or bad. 0 to 100 ranking. This is not an advertisement for Yucca. We're not in any way affiliated with them, but I recommend it because you can scan something and you're like, holy shit. I didn't realize this is the worst thing on earth. And it tells you the hazardous ingredients. The weird word is hazardous. And you read it and you're like, holy fuck, this is...
There's like 3 levels of hazardous.
Yeah.
Low, moderate, and high. Like, you're going to die if you continue eating this.
Yes. So let's get back to the topic here.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So how we got off on that tangent was I simply asked, is there a legal list? There has to be.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This is almost a rhetorical question because there almost has to be. Yep. Alcohol, that's one of the bad ones. Sugar, that's one of the good ones. Caffeine, that's one of the good ones. Ooh. Nicotine, that's another bad one. Viagra, that's another bad one. AstraZeneca, bad one.
You know, it's funny when you were saying
dairy, good one, right?
Bad and good. Caffeine's in tea. And I'm wondering how much of this kind of this list that you're mentioning comes from some of our British.
Oh, a little Boston Tea Party action.
Well, you know, America was a colony, and we
there was like what 13 of
drinkers.
13 of them.
Yeah, we were tea drinkers. So I'm just wondering, this list that you're mentioning, how much of that maybe is almost based on sugar.
Sugar went in the tea
colony, and I'm wondering if some of those sayings have just been kind of derivatives of, hey, this is part of the culture. Don't mess with the culture.
Tobacco
obviously for the longest time.
Occurring in
for
tobacco's nicotine.
Exactly. So don't mess with the culture. Tea has caffeine.
Okay. Hold on. So I like where your logic's at, but we already talked about earlier in this podcast, tobaccos aren't even allowed to be advertised anymore. When's the last time you've seen a cigarette commercial?
Well, they got demonized really hard by the mothers
against
drunk driving.
Whatever.
Yeah. Somebody demonized them. They got taken off the list. Sugar and caffeine hasn't got taken off that list yet.
I can't believe with childhood obesity, especially with Michelle Obama, that was like her number one, what she considered to be success over 8 years.
I wanted her to do better on that. I got so upset that people didn't pay more attention to her because I think she actually really wanted to make a difference there. And that's always been I don't know if I've ever told you this. My if there's one thing that I could devote the rest of my life to fixing and still, be able to earn an all right living,
I was gonna say
childhood obesity. I think it's the problem that fix it. There's a little discipline required, but really it's a food industry issue. I would love to spend the rest of my life fixing that. I don't know if I ever told you that, but that's
what you're actually passionate about.
Oh, dude. I would love to fix that. Johnny, right, our good friend, today told me a stat about childhood obesity. He told me, hey, man, apparently one of the top ways, if you take your child in to the doctor, it was a recommendation on the, what are doctors for children called?
Pediatricians.
Pediatrician. One of the top recommendations for pediatricians to help you solve through childhood obesity. So if you have a child that's obese, you bring them to your pediatrician. They're going to recommend now, this is now kind of added to the list of tool belts, surgery and drugs. To a 9-year-old, what surgery are you doing? What drugs? A 9-year-old? So you see why he told me that today, and I looked it up because I couldn't even believe it. It's true. It is in now the pediatrician's tool belt to start recommending drugs and surgery to minors that are having challenges with their weight. Meanwhile, their weight could probably be fixed within less than a year in probably 90% of cases. Right?
Quite low.
Exactly. We know many of people that went through middle school as heavy kids. There we go. And next year they came into school. Damn. 4 inches in growth can make a big difference in obesity. Little activity, one sport for one season, big difference in activity. You lose 20 pounds instantly.
Too much of this bullshit playing video games.
Video games, inactivity, no discipline, parents that don't really care about the food situation. We just talked about the sugar. Dude, we are so off track. I love it. We're so off track. I want to bring up a couple of drugs.
But I just want to know where the hell this list is and who's making the delineation between good and bad drugs. Because why are we touting constitutionalist, First Amendment, 14th Amendment? Woo, America. Why the hell and who the hell, more importantly? Because it's not the American people through voting, to my knowledge at least. I never voted on, oh shit, we got to add nicotine to the list. We got to take off sugar of the list, right? I mean,
so okay, how about this real quick? Ask you a question. Are you thinking the list should not exist and people should advertise however possible? Or are you saying that everybody should be treated equal if it's considered a drug?
Yes, the latter. I think it's wrong for some arbitrary donor or lobbyist to be able to essentially tell me, the American commoner, what can and cannot be advertised. Or what can and cannot be the negative effects. Let's talk about that, because that's where my problem is. I'm not saying I'm either pro or con about the HIV drugs and all that shit that is littered with various TV commercials across all channels. What I'm saying is I think it's wrong that certain drugs I have to use 15 of my 30-second ad talking about, you can go auctioneer with the list of side effects. And then the next commercial is a Coke commercial. The next commercial is about, Crown Royal, right?
So, do you remember when you were growing up?
Vaguely.
Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. Remember the cereal commercials? Cookie Crisp.
Cookie Crisp? I'm always trying to catch that damn rabbit on Tricks.
Uh-huh.
Silly rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
Captain Crunch. Right?
Oh, Crunch Berries. Oh, man.
Exactly.
I could down a whole box.
Real quick, I'm doing cereals. I'm not trying to attack you guys. General Mills, Kroger.
Oh, I'll attack him, you sugary fucks.
But
I'll attack you.
Real quick.
Never getting a sponsorship from them.
Do you remember when we going to the DARE program in like 6th grade or 7th grade?
Oh, yeah.
And they said, hey, one of the worst things.
Officer Woody, right?
No, that was
high school.
But DARE program.
Who's our DARE guy at Hull?
But he was saying.
Fun fact, Cody and I went to elementary school together.
Yeah. He was saying, or she was saying, I don't remember the officer. I don't remember the name for this, but for a little while, there were these cigarettes that were flavored.
No, it wasn't the cigarettes that were flavored. It was the candy cigarettes. It was like a peppermint cigarette.
No.
Because I used to get those with my dad.
No, I remember. Yeah, no, I remember. Those didn't have nicotine in it.
No, it was literally just a
candy.
Mint.
Yeah, those aren't illegal, but there was a.
You're talking about like a Swisher Sweet?
No, yes. Very similar to a Swisher Sweet.
Because those are fantastic.
Yeah. But there were like these cigarettes that were kind of marketed as, hey, strawberry flavored. And now Swisher Sweets do have this. And maybe that's what they were referring to. And maybe Swisher Sweet kind of came out of that. But I remember when we were going to the DARE program, there were these kind of flavored cigarettes or flavored cigars. They said, hey, these are kind of marketed to children. It's evil. In the DARE program, they would say that, right? And to your point, these cereals and things like that, and we're having an obesity epidemic for children, should they have a disclaimer at the end that say, hey, this may cause you to become obese? This may cause you to be diabetic? Because that's what you're kind of arguing, right?
Well, actually, yes, that is exactly what I'm arguing. But if I don't want you to go, put you on the spot here, but you just shared a story with me yesterday as far as, kind of the normalcy of the Willis household from a food intake standpoint. Cereal is not a part of your children's diet, traditionally. However, you were kind of craving it. You thought it'd be kind of fun for Lil.
Yeah.
Why don't you go over the story? Guys, I swear we're not even being paid by Yucca, but shout out twice. Help illustrate to our listeners, the story,
this is.
How difficult it was. And were you at Sprouts? Weren't you at like one of those little healthy food stores?
No.
Oh, you were just at Fry's?
We were at Fry's, which is a Kroger brand store, right?
I thought you were at Sprouts. Maybe I misheard.
But still, it doesn't matter. This brand is at Sprouts. It's at Whole Foods. This brand is the organic, healthy cereal food. Whatever that brand is. I'm not going to mention them because throwing some shade here, guys. We're on the cereal aisle. And you guys, every one of our listeners remembers going down a cereal aisle with your parents. It's one of those experiences.
Oh, man. You see the bright orange, the bright reds.
Lucky Charms, Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes.
Oh, Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, exactly. You have to argue with your parents.
Fruity Pebbles.
To get all of them. That's how you know advertising works. Like, me and Jared right now are probably stating everything that you guys are thinking about. They did such a good job advertising. So we're there. I'm like, you know what? We got a full shopping cart. I mean, you know what? I want a little Raisin Bran. Raisin Bran sounds good right now. Right?
So much for not showing shade.
Right? So Sunday night. It's Sunday night. We go grocery shopping normally in the morning, but we were a little late. I was busy all day in the yard. I probably was a calorie deficit because I skipped lunch. And I had that in my brain. I was like, I need food. I felt it. I knew I was at like a very like low carb intake for the day. So of course we're at the grocery store, and you know how you go when you go hungry,
shopping hungry.
So guess what? I'm like,
just add another $100 to your
I told my wife, I was like, hey, I gotta get some Raisin Bran. Okay, whatever. We haven't had Raisin Bran in the house for 6 months. It's one of those things that you're like, oh, buy once in a while. So we go down the cereal aisle. I'm like, okay, Raisin Bran, and I was like, you know what? I want another cereal. You know how this is how it goes. I want some grape nuts. No one even knows
grape nuts. I didn't know that part of the story.
I didn't say this. But then I was like, you know what? I want to break out Yucca and see if grape nuts are even good for you. They're good for you. They're good for you. There's no sugar in them.
It's a lame ass cereal. Fruity Pebbles.
It's like cardboard.
Fruit Pebbles.
So I broke out this app that Jared was just mentioning, and I mentioned earlier, Yucca, and I scan them. Raisin Bran, it's like middle of the line. It's like 48 or something like that from 0 to 100. Not bad, but higher calorie, higher sugar than necessary. Grape nuts, very good. I think it was like 80 plus. And I was like, you know what, Anna, let's get Lillian her very first cereal, my 2.5-year-old daughter. I would love to have her have a little cereal and milk with me tonight. She's like looking at all the fun stuff. Well, I'm like, no. Let's turn around to the ugly side of the aisle. All white boxes, organic, stupid looking. But I was like, hey, all these right now are all like, they were all $1 off. And I was like, perfect. Let's pick one. So I start scanning them all. Every single one of those organic boxes, they would get a thumbs up for organic, but they all scored in the Raisin Bran area. The Grape Nuts was 30 to 40 points higher, yet it was on the Kellogg side. I think it's a General Mills product. And so this is a advertising thing, right? Where they're advertising, they're marketing their products as organic, healthy, good. Yet I could buy this Raisin Bran item that, everyone thinks it might be worse than the organic Raisin Bran item. They're within 1 point or 2 points of each other out of 100. I was like, well, that's kind of a ripoff. Yet I'm paying a premium for that. And so there's Jared's story that he's looking for right there.
Yeah. So I guess, again, where the hell does this list exist? Yeah. And how are we creating it? Why are not all drugs considered equal?
Imagine a world where items that have more than the natural amount of caffeine or sugar, right? If they're additive to it, they have to say, hey, just so you know, this might increase diabetes. This might increase heart disease. This might increase obesity rate. This might decrease your lifespan by 10 years.
So
like Coca-Cola. Imagine them doing that on a Coke commercial. Holy fuck.
Super Bowl commercials would take a wild twist. but you know what's funny? And this is what's sad about Americans. And all right, we are going to get back 100% on topic, but quick little sidecar here.
Before we go back on topic.
Well, no, leave me alone. Do you remember, this is probably, 10 years ago? And guys, full disclaimer, neither one of us are big fast food guys. Probably twice a year I'll have a craving for like
a Chick-fil-A,
Big Mac or Chick-fil-A or something like that, right?
Big Mac? I don't think I've had one probably for 5-6 years.
Dude, I had a Big Mac like last year.
Is it good?
I love it.
Really?
Dude, Big Macs are fantastic.
Don't talk about it. You might get one on the way home.
Not mine. I will now. Gosh, I wish I was kidding.
No. Don't do it.
I won't. I'll try not to.
I'm telling Brittany.
They literally have to post their calories. Isn't a Big Mac?
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I'm not an investor in McDonald's.
They had to do that now.
Is McDonald's part of Yum Brands? No, they're not. No, they're its own thing.
Yeah, Burger King. Yum.
But anyways,
calories posted.
Oh shit.
What do we got?
Wow, an Air Force Academy football player just died at 21 years old. Walking to class. Holy shit, that's horrible. Sorry, guys.
Okay, guys. Sorry about that. I had to take a quick little.
Sorry about that, guys. So, all right, we're on our third beer. Let's start driving to results.
I had 2 things I wanted to go over, though.
Go ahead.
So, I want to give 2 examples of what has happened with advertising of drugs. One of them is called thalidomide.
Sure.
So it was a drug that was marketed in Germany and a couple of the countries, again, 60, 70 years ago. So a while back, right? So this drug was advertised as harmless as a sugar cookie. That's literally the advertisement.
I can see a marketer saying that.
4 to 5, so let's just say about 50% of the children that were exposed to this drug died shortly after birth. As harmless as a sugar cookie, was in the market for 4 years, and 50% of the mothers that use this drug as a sleeping pill. So you have a expecting mother they would take the sleeping pill because they were uncomfortable. Hey, if you're uncomfortable, pick the sugar cookie. And the kids, 50% of them die. The other 50% of them would have some of the most severe birth defects ever to be recorded in history.
You know what's funny? And guys, okay, so horrible, disgusting, actually. But, I think you and I...
All of them born with arms that were about a third of the length that they're supposed to be. Legs that would never work because they were only a stem.
I think you and I, we often make fun of is a strong word, but it's kind of an appropriate word. Annas and the Britneys of the world they're very particular on, what they want to put in their bodies, what shampoo and Wi-Fi signals and all this shit, right? But it's stories like that, so it's like, maybe I'm not thinking critically enough. Right?
I read that story and I get teared up because it says that there's 10,000 people that are still alive with these birth defects right now in Germany and other parts of the country, that their mothers took this drug and they've never been able to walk. They've never been able to pick up a spoon because their limbs are, they're just little flippers. I looked at all the images online and I look at that, I'm like, that is disgusting that it's been advertised as a sleeping pill. And I'm like, fuck. There is harm that can be done through advertising. Maybe the sleeping pill worked for non-mothers, but there wasn't the right amount of testing. Or in some cases, where I'm going to go through my next example, where the testing and the results were semi-disregarded for profit. And again, this is 70 years ago when that drug was out there.
Interesting. 70 years. Certain drugs that are being released right now and encouraged that the records are to be sealed for 70 years.
Yeah. So there's another one called Paxil. Paxil. I think I'm saying that properly. You probably have heard of it. It's been highly marketed in the last 20 years. So 20 years ago, the company that released this drug published a study to the FDA and scientists saying that this new antidepressant drug called Paxil was safe and effective for teenagers. So teenagers that were affected by, depression should take it. Unfortunately, about 12 years later, they found out that the exact opposite would occur. Teenagers that took Paxil would actually kill themselves. The rate of suicide of teenagers that were taking Paxil was much higher than teenagers that did not take it and showed depression symptoms. So antidepressant trials are extremely tricky. This is where I'm not trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? There are good people, I'm sure, at this pharmaceutical company. But here is the nuance of the conversation. And I want to make sure this is documented, but this is more recent. Antidepressant trials are extremely tricky to perform. In part because, and this is where I get a little emotional on it, because usually within the trial group, let's say 1,000 participants of the experiment, a third to a half of the subjects will typically improve on the placebo, a water pill, a sugar pill. So then they have to compare how effective was the antidepressant drug compared to the placebo.
I think placebo is a common term, but guys, just to make damn sure, essentially what the strategy is there is that, it's almost like kind of that mind over matter, in that if you think you're sick, you're going to get sick. If you think you're taking this magic pill, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
Is that in layman's terms? Am I overgeneralizing it there?
Maybe, but just for example's sakes, me and Jared, we're both in this study. We both state that we have depression. We're both 15 years of age. When we were younger. We decide to be part of the study. Maybe we're 20, whatever. And the doctor says, okay, we're going to go ahead and prescribe you the drug to Jared and me. And, maybe it's a 6-month study. 6 months later, Jared finds out that he's been taking the drug and it's helped him out. The actual drug chemical formula. I find out that I've been taking a sugar pill. Literally a little pill with some sugar in it.
Still a drug.
Okay. Water pill. Let's just say water pill. Literally a pill that has nothing in it. And that's what they consider a placebo. And in many cases, I would say more times than not, the placebo actually has a bigger benefit than the drug. And this is where the FDA says, no, you're not, you're not a drug anymore. You're not allowed in America. Right? So let's say I feel better than I've ever had in my life. And Jared says, yeah, I feel pretty good. That drug doesn't get authorized. And so you have a drug like this, like Paxil, Paxil, that says that 50%, almost 50% of the people part of the study showed improvements on the placebo in comparison to the drug. Yet it was still marketed, it was still approved, and it was still marketed to teenagers. And it, unfortunately, because maybe it was 8 months later, not 6 months, because that was the study, 8 months later, 12 months later, those kids decided to kill themselves where they most likely would not have because they were on the drug. Because these are antipsychotic, these are SSRIs, these are chemical altering drugs that take your neurochemistry and disconnect or reconnect different neurons in your brain or allow for connections to occur. It makes you not think the way you were naturally supposed to. Just like depression would, just like anxiety would. So I read those two studies, one from 70 years ago, and it sounds, that sounds like a horrific thing, birth defects. And then I read the one from this is 2015 when this whole thing came out. No longer allowed, this drug. Does it feel like we've learned much there? Someone is saying, oh, that's 70 years ago. We would never do that anymore.
7 years ago, 8 years ago.
And all of a sudden, we have another case 7 years ago. Oh, we've learned from that one. Okay, 10 years from now, are we going to learn from maybe a massive mistake?
I hope not.
Exactly.
I hope not.
And that's one of the things that I'm like, okay, well, maybe we just don't know what we don't know. Stop trying to screw with biology. Stop trying to screw with, neurology. Stop trying to screw with all these different things that Mother Nature has perfected over millions of years. What do you think? What do you think about that, man?
What do I think about that? Horrible. Obviously irrefutable. Let's call it what it is right here.
Oh my gosh.
It's embarrassing as a society, as a developed country, as a leading country, as we are, that we haven't learned from our mistakes. To your point, 70 years to 8 years ago, right? Embarrassing, horrible. I feel for everyone impacted. Makes me sick, actually. But in the same breath, it's really disturbing on what's okayed from a government agency to ingest, whether it be through our cereals, through the pharmaceutical drugs, through the liquids, whatever the case may be, right? What's FDA approved is shocking. Guys, damn, I swear they don't even give us a little bit of a kickback. This app, Yucca, whenever you start downloading it and you scan 5 or 6 items and they have the organic labels and it's great, but then all of a sudden you see these hazardous,
like heavy metals. And
then all of a sudden you click and expand. You say, oh, this word that you can't pronounce, that's an ingredient, is known to cause kidney failure. What?
Why
the fuck? Why is it in here? So here's where I'm at. So now that we're on our third beer, man, I want to start getting into my opinion a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to contradict myself in my opinion because I still can't get an answer on what drugs are okay, i.e. you don't have to tout and heavily market or at least acknowledge the negative side effects and which ones you don't. So that one I'm kind of pissed about that I don't have. Because whenever I went into this conversation, whenever I went into this podcast, I was like, oh, simple. If you need a prescription, if you need a doctor to tell you got to do it, then no more on TV, right? We're not going to be telling our doctors what we need. So,
you were thinking that I'm sure Viagra. I don't know Viagra. I'm sure you have to get a prescription for that.
I think so.
Okay. So the Viagra should not be advertised because you need a prescription. You're saying?
So what I want is I want people to go to a doctor, a trained medical professional, a licensed professional, saying, hey, I have erectile dysfunction and I want them to take blood tests and questions and blah, 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 and do what doctors do and then prescribe. I don't want Jimmy down the street. He sees a commercial saying, hey, I'm having problems with my erection. How the fuck did we get on Cialis and Viagra? There's so many other drugs, but whatever. I guess
that's an easy one.
We're in it for 45 minutes. I guess we'll go down it now.
Honestly, it's like an easy fix. Let's be honest. I don't even know if it really works. I'm sure it does because a lot of people use it, but it sounds like an easy fix compared to like allergy medication.
Sure. Okay. So here's my beef. I can't get a list of what's a good drug, what's a bad drug, and then I want a why on why you consider it a good drug and why you consider it a bad drug. I can't get that list. And here, and maybe this does exist, I would hope this one exists. You shared a story that I was not aware of. I didn't know you were going to bring it up about the caffeine as far as buying it in its natural state. You know, this powder where you think it's a teaspoon, but it's actually, instead of 100 grams, it's 100,000 grams.
Well, I'm sure they marked it properly. This guy just didn't use it properly.
Agreed. But the fact is, this guy, not an MD, can buy something and ingest a tablespoon and die.
Have you ever bought
unintentionally?
Have you ever bought ibuprofen?
Yeah.
How many tablets come in the thing?
500.
What if you ate all 500?
I'm sure you'd be fucked up or die.
So before you say the next statement, just make sure you know that you can buy a lot of things.
Tide Pods, people can die. Yeah.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is something that, again, and I kind of made light of this. How many coworkers do you have that, I'm on my 6th cup today. It's only 2 p.m. I got 2 more left in me. I mean, they just ingest coffee all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a decently intelligent person, couldn't tell you how many milligrams are in a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm. I've looked it up, so I know 100 milligrams.
Sure. Now, does that vary by different strengths and roasts and shit? Like, I don't know.
100%. Yeah.
So, okay, 100, would you say that's the average?
Yeah.
Okay. So, these people that are drinking 8 cups of coffee a day, like 800 milligrams. Granted, it's not the 100,000 that your story earlier. I guess all that is to say is I want a list or I want an explanation. I think this should be common knowledge of what is considered a good and bad drug, right? And of course it's dosage. It's, like I even made fun of, the 2 hydrogens and the oxygen. Excess water, you could fucking drown. Duh. Right? But then you obviously need it to live. So what I want to understand.
Sorry, good, bad.
Huh?
Good, bad.
Yeah.
Is opiate good? Is Oxycontin good if you're in severe pain at the hospital because you just got your leg chopped off from a car?
Yeah.
Okay, is it bad though if I was taking it right here?
Yeah.
So how is it on both lists?
Well,
you see where the issue is? There's a nuance there.
Oh, yeah. And guys, I am oversimplifying. I am black and whiting this thing. I'll tell on myself right here, right now. Right? But what I also... Sugar. In a pineapple consumed, in its natural state, i.e. you eat the pineapple, good sugar, arguably. Juicing it to where you take out all the fibers and, you just kind of take a shot, potentially bad sugar. And then adding it into Fruity Pebbles, really bad sugar, right? So there's kind of a good, better, best as far as the sugars, right? Naturally occurring versus, processed and added.
Dude, I like it. No one's reading this.
Nope. Least sexy advertising. I should be the chief marketing officer of the FDA, and I would really sex it up, right? It's awesome. But what I'm saying is the lack of foundational understanding, because, sugar is a drug, caffeine is a drug. But then all of a sudden you hear the Viagra, the Cialis, the AstraZeneca, all these various drugs that we see all the freaking time on every channel. Nickelodeon. So my wife and I, we sometimes like to watch Friends, as we're winding down for the evening. We'll have
Is that on Nickelodeon?
Yeah. Nick and I, like at around 9 p.m., we're winding down, we're cleaning up the kitchen, we're doing other shit. We'll have Friends in the background.
It's crazy. That's on Nickelodeon.
It will literally have an erectile dysfunction drug, a Cialis or a Viagra.
Yeah.
A Nickelodeon. I'm like, well, what the hell, guys? So what I don't understand is the difference between good and bad drug, and to your point, good and bad situations, right? Today, we have all our limbs, we're not in any severe pain, no Oxycontin, versus leg chopped off, Oxycontin, good and bad situation. So what I want to understand is prescription versus non-prescription drug. You can take 500 Tylenol, kill yourself. You can take 100,000 milligram of caffeine, kill yourself. You can take 10 Viagra, kill yourself. I don't know. So I want to understand the levels, because I don't think that's well communicated.
It's too much information. It's too much.
I would argue not enough.
Okay. I would love everybody to read one book a month.
Yeah.
I would love everybody to read one book a year.
I wish, yeah.
Okay. Most people probably will die with one book every 5 years. Okay? Would have reading maybe 10 books in their entire life. And that's in places that are literate. So to ask that's a large ask. It's a big request of the general. That's why I just don't know if it's possible. And that's why regulations, of course, are there.
Okay. So the regulations are going to be there. Okay. So then clearly there is a list of a lot more educated people than the general public on saying, hey, this is a drug, the Tylenol, you can buy that OTC over the counter.
Nicotine and tobacco cause lung cancer. Simply.
Then if we want to simplify it, I'll go into my state that I was going to say here earlier. If it requires a prescription, get the fuck that off the TV. All you're doing is perpetuating a horrible epidemic in America to where we have a drug problem, as we referenced in an earlier episode. Get prescription drugs off the air.
What about cereal? What about cereal?
Is that prescription drugs? Sugar is not a prescription drug today. So if I'm forced to make it very black and white with people a lot smarter than you and I that have clearly drawn that line in the sand, prescription versus non-prescription, if it requires a doctor prescription, an MD, to say, yep, Cody needs this, yep, Jared needs that, get it off the air. If it does not, advertise away, boys.
And the reason it's off the air is because you are trying to convince people to use the drug that may not actually need the drug.
So the reason why I have it off the air is because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to self-create doctors. And what I mean by that is I should never go to Dr. Willis saying, hey, I got X, Y, and Z side effect. Why don't you go ahead and prescribe me ABC drug? I understand information is powerful, and if you want to do your outside research, great, but I don't want some marketer giving me just the highlights to make me a self-prescribed doctor. Because right now what's happening, because let's say you don't do it.
It's actually funny. There's a study on this.
So doctors, unfortunately, are almost a commodity, right? And what I mean by that is to me, the consumer, okay, I asked Dr. Willis for XYZ prescription. You're not going to give it to me? I'll Google Dr. Smith. Hey, Dr. Smith, I have XYZ. Okay, sure. Boom. Because they're trying to enhance the patient experience. Good, bad, or different. That's just how it is. Right?
There's literally pain centers for this stuff.
Because I'm literally searching for a prescription pad at this point. Hey, that commercial said, I have X, Y, and Z symptoms and problems. This drug can help me. So if it requires a prescription, clearly people smarter than you and I and people smarter than the masses, because that's the truth that I have to base this off of, have determined what is needed for a prescription drug and what is the sugars of the world. So with that black and white rationale, because, we're king for a day here, right? If it requires a prescription, get off the air. I don't want to see ads. Fire every marketer.
I like it. Okay. So, king for a day. I was watching a stat here and watching a case scenario, and this stat blows me away and started kind of making me think about the drug issue. 20% of all emergency room visits are to obtain painkillers. Intentionally.
Shit.
Intentionally. Not that they're in pain. Not that they're in a problem. 20% of people going to the hospital right down the road right here. You're going to drive by it on your way home, right? Gilbert,
yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Gilbert Mercy, right?
Tonight, let's say 100 people go there. 20 people are going to go get pain pills. I was in an accident. I fell down the stairs. They make up lies. 20. That's absurd. So clearly, we have a opioid addiction. We have a painkiller addiction. Okay, so there's a problem. And I look at it and I say, okay, we have a problem. How do we fix it? I like your idea of getting the ads off TV, because I don't know how many of those opioid people. I don't know. I don't know the answer of how many of them actually got addicted because of the ads. I think the opioid's kind of a weird one, because they probably prescribed it for something stupid.
How often do you see painkiller ads?
I don't know if I do. Most of the ads are probably allergy related. Honestly, erectile dysfunction related. I don't know. Probably like
I see a lot of HIV shit.
Yeah, I see a lot of HIV stuff. I see a lot of, honestly, I don't have TV, but I think I remember seeing a lot of, what's the other sexually transmitted disease that kind of creates like bumps? The bad
herpes.
Herpes. Yeah. I see some herpes ads. Humana, which is like a drug for Crohn's disease. I know that's a big one. But anyways, I like your idea of your idea of getting things off the airway, but I actually want to take it one step farther. I don't know if I'm going to say you can't advertise. But what I do want to see is anything that alters the mind or body state. That's what a drug is. Sugar, caffeine, opioids. I want to see all of them.
Tylenol, melatonin.
Yes, everything. I just want a Surgeon General warning. I can't say how strongly I have believed in the whole cigarette Surgeon General warning. It has decreased the American cigarette use significantly since the 90s. Right? To people that really are just diehard smokers. Cool. I don't want to reduce the free market. I like the free market. We are in America. We are not in, a communist China. We're not in some country that doesn't allow for the free market to exist. I just want to make sure that if you're buying a product, you're aware of the complications that can occur. And if you still buy it, go ahead. Cigarettes, I go to gas stations often. I watch people buy cigarettes. They buy it They know the issue. They know the problem. I would love, and this is crazy because we're going from prescription drugs. I would love for anything to have that little warning. Honestly, in Starbucks, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, General Mills. I'm sorry, Kellogg's. A little tiny stamp on the bottom saying, "Hey, just so you know, this has added sugar, which contributes to obesity and diabetes." Hey, what's sugar? What's another one? Caffeine. On a little tiny drinks, there's caffeine on there. Hey, just so you know, this contributes to jittery and possibly sleep apnea or not sleep apnea. Sleep deprivation where you can't sleep well. People know that already, but you know what? Throw it on there. I bet you people start making better decisions. McDonald's is already forced to do this, right? They already have their calories on there. So why are we treating these sugar and caffeine people any differently? I want to see that. I think that makes people at least make better decisions.
Okay. I'm on board with that.
I'm all right with that one. For the drug advertising, they already disclaim everything. And I gave you 2 examples where they sold something really good and they didn't provide the badness of it. One thing we didn't get into, I don't want to get into it now, but I read through where specifically that Paxil drug, the antidepressant drug, they published a report. The FDA approved the drug, 1999, 2000. Another scientist read through the data 20 years or 15 years later. Says, guys, this is clearly this was not done properly. I don't know how you fix that. How do you get? They're not. It's not like they're hired people. This is FDA scientists. This is third-party people that are reviewing the data, and they get completely different results. I don't know how you fix that.
The only way you fix it is you make it black and white. You define drugs, and you don't define drugs. What is and what is not, right?
I know. Maybe we get around the word pharmaceutical. You know what I'm saying? Like Paxil, ibuprofen. Those are drugs. Just so you know. And I like the word drug because people already have a negative connotation. I am taking this, and there are possible repercussions.
Yep.
And that's what I think maybe just the general public needs to realize. I think the reason, and it's funny because I saw lots of things where the pharmaceutical industry relabeled drugs as pharmaceuticals to get away from that negative terminology.
You think drugs, you think marijuana, cocaine, etc. All right. I'm going to board with you. Maybe I was a little too lenient. I like where you went.
With the sugar and the caffeine?
With the explicit, hey, this is what you're doing. If you're okay with that, you're a grown-ass man, grown-ass woman. This is what you're doing.
A little label on the cereal box, a little label in the Starbucks cup.
Yep. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right, guys. I think this is our fourth episode that we've actually videoed.
Yeah, third, I think.
Third. Let us know what you think. It's always kind of fun interacting with our viewers. Of course, we love whenever we're proven wrong because, Cody and I are trying to continuously learn and get better, etc. Let us know what you think. Feedback from a video perspective, quality standpoint. Again, we're very open to feedback from all things. We're always trying to continuously improve. I'm sorry. So, guys, thanks for the various podcast recommendations. Feedback, goods, bads, uglies, you name it. We love it.
I love it. See you guys.
Bye.